Welcome to Binging on Britain. I'm Katie and I'll be your hostess as we gorge on bits of British history. Let's dig in. Question number 1. Which English queen was accused of witchcraft during her stepson's reign? Joan of Navarre, Dowager Queen of England, was accused in 1419 of witchcraft by her confessor. Her stepson, with whom she had enjoyed a close relationship, saw her arrested and her money and lands confiscated. During her 3 years of confinement, she was never tried on the charges raised against her, which led many to believe that her stepson knew these charges were false. She was released from her comfortable imprisonment, and her monies and lands were returned to her during her stepson's illness, and she led a quiet life at her home, being buried at Canterbury Cathedral upon her death in 1437. Question number 2. Why are ravens kept at the Tower of London? So Charles II was warned that, quote, if the Tower of London ravens are lost or fly away, the crown will fall, and Britain with it, end quote. According to legend, anyway. Since that time, the legend has been taken very seriously, and 7 ravens are kept at the tower so as to protect the king and kingdom from disaster. The ravens are kept in relative luxury and are cared for by a dedicated yeoman called the Raven Master. They have occasionally been known to fly away, and to prevent them from wandering too far, their wings are trimmed. Additionally, an extra raven is kept to prevent the ruin of the kingdom in case others get out of their fortified home. Question number 3. Did the UK create the first postage stamp? Absolutely. In 1840, during the reign of Queen Victoria, the postage stamp was born. The first stamp, called a penny black, was introduced, and our modern system of postal service was shifted from a post payment to a prepayment service. A complete sheet of these stamps are held by the British Postal Museum. Question number 4. When did archaeological excavations start in Britain? I love this question, and its answer kind of surprised me. See, I've known that antiquarians were doing excavations by the late 17th century, but I had no idea the first known excavation was in the 1620s. The Duke of Buckingham was prompted by James I to undertake an excavation. Can you guess the site? This probably isn't surprising, as it's England's and maybe even the world's most famous Neolithic monument. That's right, Stonehenge was the site of England's first known excavation. It is probably the most studied monument in the country, and it's the one that started it all. Question number 5. What Neolithic village was the first to be excavated? So if we fast forward 300 years from the first excavation at Stonehenge and dash north a little over 700 miles, we'd be at the excavation of Skara Brae, the first Neolithic village to be excavated in Britain, and one of the most amazing sights ever. This village was hidden underground until a storm revealed its existence. Because it had been so well protected and preserved, it is the most complete prehistoric site in Europe. The site consists of 10 homes with stone hearths, beds, cupboards, and even toilets, with a primitive sewer system to flush waste into the nearby ocean. The site was looted in the early 20th century, and it is unknown how many or what artifacts may have been lost. The site is also at risk due to coastal erosion and climate change, but scientists are doing all they can to preserve the village for future generations to learn from and experience. Also, just an FYI, you can visit the site year-round, weather permitting, for roughly £10. That's a steal for such an amazing experience. Question number 6. What event caused the extraordinary preservation at Must Farm? Must Farm was a unique Bronze Age settlement, set apart by the fact that it was built on top of a platform on a river deep in the Cambridgeshire Fens. The village posts caught fire, allowing the buildings and artifacts to fall into the river, which allowed them to be preserved. The site has now been completely excavated, reburied, and sealed. And now scientists are working to maintain the preservation of the artifacts while studying them, and hopefully the artifacts will go on display soon. The site almost reminds me of a Bronze Age London Bridge. Not like the current London Bridge, but like the medieval London Bridge that had houses and shops and even a church just sitting on top of the Thames. Question number 7. How do building projects help archaeology? So it's not uncommon in the UK that planning permission for a building site requires that an archaeological survey be done or that an archaeologist is present in case artifacts are found. Over the last couple of years, excavations have been done ahead of the building of a high-speed rail line, and the finds have been incredible. From Roman busts near a medieval abandoned church to an Anglo-Saxon cemetery and even an entire Roman settlement. These discoveries would have been lost in the construction if they had not been discovered ahead of the building, but now have been studied and preserved. Also, in 2022, it was announced that a large, intricate, and beautiful Roman mosaic floor had been found in London ahead of a planned development in Southwark near the Shard. It's hard to imagine that in such a large city, these artifacts can still be safely nestled under layers of soil, virtually undisturbed for millennia. Question number 8. What claim to fame does the Norfolk coast have? At a beach called Happisburgh, which honestly just makes me think of the Habsburgs and their deformed chins, but I digress, scientists have discovered some footprints, some very old footprints, roughly 345,000 years old. The prints of 5 people, including children, who walked along the coast, likely gathering plants and shellfish, are the oldest to be found outside of Africa. These discoveries are at a high risk of being lost to erosion, so locals keep a close eye on them and notify scientists if they see anything concerning at the site. Question number 9. What recent discovery ties Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, and Thomas Cromwell together? Just last week, it was announced that Cromwell's Book of Hours had been identified by researchers at Hever Castle. The ornate book was published in 1527, and copies of the book were also owned by Henry VIII's first and second queens. The book was identified off of Holbein's portrait of Thomas, in which the book in question sits on a table next to Cromwell's arm. The book was discovered in the Trinity College Library and is on display next to Anne's copy at Hever. Question number 10. What medical supplies were on board the Mary Rose? Unsurprisingly, the barber surgeon on board the Mary Rose had tools necessary to practice Tudor medicine, including what might have been needed in a wartime floating field hospital. But what we're going to talk about today is the tool needed for when a soldier had a little too much fun with a lady during shore leave and came back to ship with some super fun STI. Gonorrhea had been plaguing England since the 12th century, while its fun friend syphilis made its appearance between 1490 and 1510. Either way, you weren't going to have a fun time getting rid of your intimate infection because the cure, which we now know did not treat or cure the infections, it just poisoned the patient, was mercury. And not just a little swallow of the stuff. Nope, the poisonous medication was inserted into the urethra via a syringe. And not just once. Oh no, this process had to be repeated over and over and over again until you seemed better. Interestingly, while the Mary Rose's surgeon did have a urethral syringe and mercury in his tool chest, none of the skeletons of the sailors showed signs of syphilis. Maybe they were just good guys, or maybe their fear of the treatment led them to make safer choices, but it seems likely that the syringe got very little use. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Binging on Britain. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it wherever you listen. For more bits of British history, follow me on YouTube. Have a great day.